shop in a city, which is every coffee shop in every city on a day, which is every day. Hello, friends, and welcome to the 5th episode of Barista Unfiltered, a podcast dedicated to the life and times of baristas. They tell us what's brewing in their lives and work in this free-flowing and unfiltered podcast. I'm Jodie Lee.
And I'm Austin Miller.
We are your hosts, and we're so grateful you've joined us for another episode. Today, our guest is Monica Burton. She is a barista who lives in Lafayette, Colorado. Those of you who've been listening to all of our shows know that Jake the Roaster works at Proper Grounds as well, and it's Proper Coffee and Cocktails now in Lafayette. And so Monica is good friends with him as well, and they work together. I'm going to do most of the interviewing today because I know Monica, and we've been friends, and we see each other a lot, but we don't know a whole lot about each other. So this is going to be a ton of fun. We're still going to get our weekly update from Jake. This podcast is just being aired in between the 2 weekly episodes. So look for an update from Jake later next week. Sit tight right now and enjoy getting to know Monica Burton. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Monica.
What's this afternoon? We're recording in the afternoon again.
Yes.
Monica worked this morning.
Yes.
As did I.
I'm the only one who hasn't worked today. How was your day, girlfriend?
Not too bad. No, it's a pretty easy day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, she's an angel of mercy because she brought me afternoon coffee. And friends, if Brian Harrelson is listening to this, he's going to be shocked and appalled that I'm using a paper straw. But it's actually not that bad. It's working out just fine for me.
You drink it within a reasonable amount of time.
But she tells me it's going to be okay. So we're saving the planet today. And I'm sure this is compostable.
Recyclable.
We'll do better next time.
If I had it my way, I would have brought you a mason jar, but we didn't have any extra.
Oh. So tell me what you're drinking today.
I am drinking an oat milk cappuccino, kind of, on ice.
What kind of straw is that?
Silicone. It's a silicone coffee straw.
It totally looks like a yerba mate gourd straw.
Yeah. It's like that and silicone, and it fits like actually in the lid of most coffee cups.
Nice.
Some of the round ones don't fit.
And how much does that run you? Because more and more coffee shops are not having straws.
I think this was like $7 or $8. I got it in New York last week, so yeah.
How was your trip to New York?
Amazing. It was so much fun.
She went for a wedding.
Time.
A friend's wedding.
Yes, and it was incredible, and I totally fangirled out the whole time I was there.
Did you see all the things?
Most everything. We didn't do a lot. We didn't go to any Broadway shows or go to the museums or anything, but we just hung out in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
Which you can have a great time doing.
A lot of good food.
Yeah. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your life story. Like, when did you get involved in coffee?
I have been in coffee actually for about 12 years now. I started off in a Starbucks inside of a Target. And I actually didn't like coffee when I first started working in coffee at all. I only ever drank hot chocolate. But there was a management position open, and so I applied and randomly got it. So that's how I started.
Is there sort of an industry funny name for a Starbucks inside Target, like a Starget?
No, but
or a Tarbucks?
We just call it a licensed store. So like Target employs everyone there, but Starbucks has like the ultimate say on what like drinks are prepared and all that.
And those employees won't let you tip them.
Yeah, because Target employees can't be tipped.
They're not allowed. Did you know that, Austin?
I've seen that before. That sucks.
Yeah. So you're missing out, I guess, on a lot of money that people are used to giving to you.
Yeah.
But I wondered this: if you paid with the Starbucks app, where you can tip, what happens to that money?
That's a good question. I mean, this was 12 years ago, so there was no app at the time.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I never used it, but I know what you're talking about.
You don't know because you live 2 blocks from your coffee shop.
It's interesting to me though that that you obviously you had some sort of a management experience, but it wasn't in coffee. And that would never happen in an independent coffee shop. Like you would never just hire somebody because they knew how to manage. They would have to know how to manage and also like know coffee to be a manager.
Well, technically, I didn't really know how to manage either.
That makes more sense.
And the manager of Target knew my husband. And so it was kind of I don't know, I knew the right person, I guess.
Yeah.
It worked out well for me though, because here I am working in coffee still. But
so how long were you at the Target?
a little over a year. And then I kind of took about a year and a half break off of coffee. We moved back to our tiny hometown that doesn't have, well, it at the time didn't have a coffee shop. So I served for a while, which was awful. And then I worked at a casino in Kansas City for 5 years, and I managed a restaurant and the coffee shop there.
Okay. Is that coffee shop still there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what was it called?
In the casino. It's called Roasted.
Roasted.
It was originally a Starbucks, and they like hired me to. So I was serving in the casino for a little while, and they asked me if I would come and like help fill in some scheduling gaps since I knew how to do coffee, and then I ended up managing.
Yeah, she told me earlier that she's managed every coffee shop she's worked at except for the one she's at currently.
Yeah.
So wow. AJ, look out.
No, not doing that again. Every coffee shop I've worked at, I've not only managed, but I've also helped open. So like the Starbucks wasn't open before, like I helped them open it. And then the one in the casino, we actually switched from Starbucks to the casino opened up their own coffee shop. And then I helped open the wine bar side of the Brewing Market in Lafayette here. And then I helped open one in Erie, and now I'm at Proper.
Too funny.
Yeah.
What did you find your biggest challenge in coffee management? Like, why would you never do it again?
Because I want to stay at home with my kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like being a manager?
I loved it, actually. I would, if I didn't have Link, I would totally go back to it. I really liked it. I half considered it when the job was up at Proper, but I just really like staying at home with Link during the week.
And the funny thing is, when you're managing and you're making the schedule, everybody's like, "Oh, you must have the dream schedule because you're making your own schedule." Right. But I found that means you're at the mercy of the schedule a lot of times.
Yes, exactly. And you get stuck working the doubles that nobody wants, and when everybody takes off work and especially if it tends to be, hard to get people, which I know here in San Francisco, it's actually surprisingly difficult to get people because the economy is so hot here. So like, in order to keep the place running, a lot of times you do have to make those sacrifices. And I'm sure that's been the same experience for you. For sure.
Yeah. Austin, what kind of challenges do you have as a manager of a coffee house?
Well, because San Francisco's gotten so expensive, there's just not as many people who can make it in the city full time on a barista wage. So the pool of prospective employees, I believe, is smaller. On top of that, there's more cafes open, so the competition for that shrinking pool of employees has shrunk or has grown. So then, keeping the place staffed is challenging. Also, I mean, when you're managing, it's different from being just a regular employee because you're always having to, even if you're having a bad day, you're always having to kind of set the mood. And so, that if you do like give away a drink to a friend one time and somebody sees you do that, then you're setting the stage that that's okay. So you can't, you really can't give yourself a lot of leeway as far as your behavior goes on the floor. You have to always be kind of like on top of your game. So those
right.
Those are challenge. Not that I mind doing that. Like it's a challenge that I enjoy, but it makes the day, I think, a little bit harder than if you're just a regular barista and not managing.
Well, and I've noticed too, like one of the hardest things is the fact that you're expected to do all of these other things besides be behind the bar, but there's never enough staffing so that you can take a full day to not be behind the bar.
Right.
5 days behind the bar if you're working full time. And then here and there, try and get like your office hours and get all the invoicing done and the ordering, scheduling, and
I'm really lucky because I have owners of the shop that are really involved. So they take care of a lot of the checkbook issues and that kind of stuff. And mainly I do like, ordering, setting the example on the floor, making sure that things are running well in the coffee shop. But that's not always the case. And I have worked for a place where the owners were a little bit more absentee.
Yeah.
So is running a coffee shop more difficult, less difficult, about the same as managing a toddler?
I mean, there are pros and cons to both.
Yeah. Tell us about Link.
Oh, man.
She's one of the proudest mamas ever.
He's the cutest thing ever. I'm not at all biased, I promise. He turns 3 in like 3 weeks, which is very exciting. He's asked for a Super Mario themed birthday party. So
this is his 3rd request.
I'm very excited.
Birthday theme.
It's true.
It's been changing a lot.
We started off with Avatar: The Last Airbender, which would have been cool. And then he randomly was like, ooh, maybe rocket ships. And now it's Super Mario, and it's set in stone because I've already ordered invitations. That's done. So now I have 3 weeks to hand make all the decorations because I am a Pinterest mom.
She's
a little bit
intense about that.
Yeah.
Parties are phenomenal for her little one. So you've been married to your high school sweetheart for 15 years.
15 years.
How'd you guys meet?
We were both dating other people, and we just kind of all of us started hanging out. I was a sophomore in high school. He was a junior. Mm-hmm. And we were super religious back then. Not so much anymore, but we were. And we started like going to church together and hanging out. And yeah. And we both, broke up with people we were with before.
And what was this? What was this in Colorado?
No, in Missouri. Very small town, Missouri. Yeah. Okay. We technically met when I was like 9 and he was 10. Mm-hmm. But we only like discovered that later in life that we had actually met before. So, yeah.
Does he drink coffee?
Yes. But he's very particular.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about that.
I mean, kind of particular. He wants good espresso, but then he ruins it by putting like, an ungodly amount of flavored syrup in it. Like way more than you would normally put in a drink. Mm-hmm. He likes his sugar.
Like a half a cup?
I mean, like we put 30 grams in a 16 ounce. He asks for like 40.
Okay. That's pretty gross.
Yeah.
It's just like drinking syrup.
Once he stops doing it, though, he'll stop. I used to sit there and like hold the sugar thing upside down for like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I used to drink. It's funny because I started out drinking, like when I drank coffee, I would drink, the largest drink I could possibly get with all of the sugar. And now like I've gone smaller and smaller and smaller. Like I've recently been drinking a lot more cortados and like, went from 16 ounces to 12 and then cappuccinos. And now I'm in like cortados a lot.
That's like what happens when you're a barista. I feel like
you just keep titrating the sugar out and the milk out.
Yeah.
When I met Austin, he did not like that I was drinking hazelnut lattes. I was drinking them. Were they like 12 ounces in the big Jodie bowls?
Yeah. Yep.
12-ounce lattes with hazelnut, and he refused. He refused to give me what I wanted, so he would give me just a little bit less every. And pretty soon he got
a good idea.
He didn't even ask for my permission. He just like, I'm got to get over this. So he kept pulling the hazelnut out, and then eventually I was drinking a coffee with no sugar in it, and then he started taking the milk away. I know that's Austin's fault. That's totally Austin's doing. Yeah, thanks, Austin.
It's a good thing, right?
It is. It's totally a good thing, but it's not something I would have done on my own.
Right.
Yeah. So vegetarianism is pretty important to you. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
I think this is fascinating.
So let's see. I went vegetarian, I think 11 years ago. It was actually when I was working at Target.
The Starget.
Yeah, the Starget. I read a book and then it ruined me for life. In a good way. But
what did you read?
It's called Skinny Bitch.
Okay.
It's fairly popular now, I think. A lot of people know about it, but it's these two skinny bitches is what they call themselves. They're like skinny, adorable models that were actually promoting veganism in the book, but I was like, no way I could ever do that. Like, I have to have milk and cheese. But I stopped eating meat, and up until that point, I'd only ever known one vegetarian my entire life because I grew up in small town Missouri, which is all about meat and potatoes. Yeah, and then a year and a half ago, my husband and I watched a documentary called What the Health, which I had already like watched many, many, many documentaries on veganism and, had tried to go vegan before. But we watched this one and he said, I'll go fully vegan with you. And I was like, done. Let's do it. So him and I and Link was a year and a half old at the time. We all went vegan overnight and haven't looked back since.
And how was that transition?
Easy for me, and easy for my husband too. He ate meat and other animal products when we went out to eat, but for a long time we had only eaten vegan at home. So it's always going out to eat that makes it more difficult. But at home it was super easy. So it was just a matter of like switching where we went out to eat and what we had.
So what do you do if you go back to Missouri?
Kansas City's not terrible. Kansas City actually has some pretty good vegan options.
Yeah.
It's when I go back to Chillicothe, my hometown, in like central North Missouri, of like less than 9,000 people, that I have a little bit more difficulties there. I mean, I couldn't even find curry powder the last time I was in town, so that was a problem. But it's usually like frozen pizza without cheese, or I ended up making my own curry powder with different ingredients, and having like chickpea curry with rice. We just don't go out to eat when we go home.
And so probably like the one question that you've gotten a lot about veganism, and I'm curious, just going back to that book, was the book Skinny Bitch, was it about staying skinny and like keeping a figure, or was that a ethical thing?
They had both in there. They talked a lot about health and the health issues with eating animal products, which is what made me originally decide that's what I wanted to do, because diabetes, heart disease, like all of those types of things run in my family. And I was like, well, I'm just going to not get it. I refuse. So that was my biggest thing. But they also talked a lot about the ethical side of it, which, like the idea of not eating like meat was easy for me, because I'm like, well, I don't want to kill an animal to eat to get nutrients. It was the cheese and dairy that I was like, I mean, it can't be that bad, right? Like, plus cheese is addicting and super delicious. I mean, I would still say it's super delicious. It a little bit grosses me out now, but I know that it's good. It's just I don't want to like contribute to that at all.
What was the hardest part of going vegan?
In some aspects, the socialization, like when we want to go out to eat with other friends, it can be difficult to find a place that has options for us. But actually, here is not too bad at all. But, yeah.
I mean, salads are always vegan if you get the cheese off of them. Like,
but the problem with salad is that like I actually hated salad for like 8 years, because that was my only option when I went out to eat, was just salad, and so I got sick of it, and I refused to eat salad. But now I'm like getting back into salad, because I've like been eating healthier, because you can eat a very unhealthy vegan diet, which is a lot easier to do than you would think. But I've been trying to eat, a more plant-based.
Same with vegetarians, though.
Yeah.
A lot of vegetarians I knew in my 20s, they're just eating pasta. They're like,
pasta, cheese, like processed foods. Oreos are vegan. I love Oreos.
Because they're made out of chemicals.
Right. I mean, they're not good. Well, then.
You can eat chemicals and still be vegan.
Yeah.
You really can.
You can't have cheese, but
yeah,
you can have chemicals.
Yeah.
Everything comes out of New Jersey.
Right.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about vegan, vegetarian?
I mean,
Just encourage everybody to try it.
yeah, like don't be scared to actually try something that's vegan. I don't know how many times like we just got somewhat recently got vegan donuts in at the coffee shop per my request. Not that I'm taking credit for it, but you know, I was tired of like my only option to eat, like of something to eat at the coffee shop was a bag of chips. And so I was like, we need something else. So we started getting these donuts in, and people immediately see the vegan logo and they're like, oh, they're vegan. You don't want to try that. Or they'll tell their kids that.
They might as well say like nasty donuts to some people. Like they
Right.
don't. They're just as good. They are. And I'm not vegan myself, but like I eat that stuff because I work at the cafe and we have the vegan goods. And like people will be like, "What's good?" And I'm like, "Well, there's this vegan pumpkin bread," and they're like, "Oh, vegan." And I'm like, "No, actually, that pumpkin bread's really good." Now, some people will have me put it through the toaster and put butter on top, but that's a whole nother story.
I mean, there are so many times where I'm like, I'll pay you money if you can actually tell a difference, because you can't. Like I've made vegan cake at home, which is a little hobby of mine, baking. And I've made vegan cakes for probably 10 years now, and you can't tell a difference at all. So
Yeah,
just try it.
I would say, I mean, I'm not vegan or vegetarian, but I like to act like one occasionally. So I would say probably 50% of my meals are vegetarian or vegan.
I love that.
Yeah, so like you don't have to be a teetotaler about it.
No.
If you just want to be mindful and still be able to socialize with people, I think that's the middle ground you can sort of tinker with. And some weeks I'm more vegetarian than I am not. Depends on who I'm eating with. Like if I'm with my family, they're not cooking vegetarian, and I'm gonna eat whatever they're eating and just let it be. But I'm moderate in so many things like that. I'll just borrow from many habits.
I think people get scared of the vegan label because there are definitely a lot of like crazy vegans out there that are like, oh, you have to be 100% if you're gonna even like, just don't call yourself a vegan if you're gonna eat meat, which is fine. Like it's totally fine to try some meat based plant, like meals, but then don't not try something just because it's labeled vegan.
Or just start eating salads once a day, or once a couple
Mondays,
times a week.
Right?
Yeah, that's Paul McCartney's whole thing. Is he vegan or is he vegetarian?
I think he's vegetarian, but I want to say that Stella McCartney might be vegan. I know that I think that all of her clothing is vegan, which makes me happy.
Yeah,
I can afford it. But
if no one's heard about that, Paul McCartney was trying to encourage everyone to just be vegetarian one day a week.
Right.
And I think that's the easiest way to start a habit. It's kind of like what we're talking about with how to get sugar out of your coffee and milk out of your coffee, is just start slowly, make it one day, meatless Monday. Yeah. And then you'll see that you feel better. That's what most people identify
My husband
with.
has talked about like how much more energy he has since going vegan. Like, I mean, I immediately started losing weight, like baby weight, after going vegan. I mean, yeah, it's good.
And then you actually want to eat those foods instead of having this mentality of what you're missing out on. You're realizing like what you're gaining, the health benefits you're gaining, you're feeling them all day long. So I think that's an easy way to experiment with it. Just try it a day. You wanted to talk a little bit about Love and Arms Farm Sanctuary. What's that about? I don't know anything about that.
There is a farm sanctuary just north of here in Erie. I think they've been in their location for a little over 2 years now, but they basically rescue animals from the farming industry and, let them live out their lives in happiness without going to slaughter.
And Jon Stewart's doing this too.
Yes, he is, which I think is so fantastic.
Like when he retired from is it Tonight Show, Today's Show? I'm terrible with that
Daily
stuff.
Show.
Daily Show. Yeah. He was just going to a big farm with hundreds of animals that he was just going to take care of in retirement.
If I could talk my husband into it,
that's what you would do.
One day.
Yeah.
After I do the other million things I want to do. But anyway, it's a really cool place.
Where is it?
It's in Erie.
Erie.
on like County Road 7. But they've currently have, I think, 3 horses, like 12 roosters that they've rescued from cockfights, which I wouldn't have even imagined
The people still do that, yeah.
I mean, they have at least one from cockfights in Denver.
Wow.
Which is insane to me.
Yeah.
They've got pigs and goats and cows, and they've got a turkey named Walter. Actually, I think they just recently had a couple of animals pass away, which broke my heart. But like Rocky the rooster, he was kind of the head rooster of all the hens. He just passed away. But there is one animal there that I think is everyone's favorite. His name's Tito. And when we first went to the sanctuary last summer, Tito was brand new. He'd only been there, I think he was like 3 or 4 months old when they rescued him from the dairy industry. And of course, like when they take you through the tour of the sanctuary, they tell you about each animal and where they got, like their backstory, where they got them from, why they rescued them. And so they start telling the story about Tito and how they rescued him from the dairy industry. And as a male calf in the dairy industry, he would have gone to be slaughtered for veal. And I've read all the stories before. I've seen all the documentaries. But for some reason, she starts telling the story, and I just couldn't do it. Like I had to walk away and go like be by the sheep. I started bawling like a baby. I couldn't handle it. Seeing like that sweet little brown face. I mean, he was just a big puppy dog. He was still so young. He would jump up on the volunteers and like so loving. But yeah, that was difficult. Like hearing the story. And then 2 days later, I go to work at the coffee shop and I open the milk cooler and see the cooler full of milk, and I started bawling again. Like, oh, little Tito, poor guy. Like, he's so sweet. He's big now, though. It's a wonderful place. Like they do all kinds of events. They just did a big Halloween event last Saturday, and had some vegan food trucks, and took donations and did like trick or treating for the kids with all vegan candy.
So they're just mainly raising awareness and providing care for these animals.
Yeah, it's
they can
so
rescue.
Cool.
Yeah.
I want to go and start volunteering there, but
I'm sure they would love to have you. I know,
with
time.
A toddler.
Time.
Yeah.
Time slips into the future.
That's true.
That's what happens to time. So before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about France, because overnight we gained ourselves a listener in France. I'm watching these statistics truthfully, I'm probably looking at it 3 times a day.
Me too.
Just like to see who's listening.
As you should.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about it.
So for every listener that we get in a foreign country that has a unique language that I can learn and try to butcher, I will. So I want to say bonjour les amis to our French friend. And it's really timely that we got a French friend right now, because Monica has this dream in her heart to move to France.
Hopefully.
I know. So tell us about that. What started that?
I have pipe dreams. That's the problem.
That is a blessing.
We'll see if it actually happens. Finances are a big thing. Like,
well,
moving
for a moment, put the finances
Europe.
aside. Just tell us the dream.
I mean, we started talking about moving to Europe, somewhere in Europe, maybe a year ago. And I say we, it was more me trying to talk my husband into it. And we looked at Copenhagen, and then we started talking about, I'm going to butcher this, Aix-en-Provence. So like southern France. So I don't know. Copenhagen is very appealing because it's super eco-friendly. Like everyone bikes, and there's a lot of sustainable shops, but then it's rainy and cold, and then I'd have to learn Danish, I think.
So, like, when are you going to start teaching your son French so you can enlist him on your side in this?
He has actually already started learning French a little bit. We got a little app called Gus on the Go, and he pulls it up on the iPad, and it's the cutest thing ever. It's just like a child would start learning English or whatever language. There is no like English translations. It just pops up the fruit or the animal and it says it in French and he repeats it. And then there's little games that he has to choose, like le pomme, which is the apple, and he'd have to choose it. Like he'll go walking through the house going, le chat, le chat. And I'm like, oh, what is that? What sound does that animal make? And he'll go, meow. Hey, you're learning. I don't know French yet. He knows it better than I do, but
You're probably learning from him.
Really, I am.
Yeah.
I'll get there eventually.
So what do you see? What do you see yourself doing in France?
Nothing.
Okay. Just enjoying it.
Yeah. So my husband's a self-taught software developer. And he can basically work from wherever. Mm-hmm. So ideally he'd work for the same company that he's with, because he works for an amazing company right now, in Broomfield. But yeah, he could work doing the software development thing, and I can just, do the same thing I'm doing, which is mostly staying at home with Link, and then, maybe do something on the weekends.
How much are you working right now at Proper?
Just Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you didn't get into the fact that you're homeschooling him, right? At home, so you're putting him through.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't really started much of that yet because he's still pretty young, but yeah, that's the goal, to homeschool him. And I mean, my whole thought is, what better way to teach him about, World War II than to take him to France and show him the places where the battles were fought. And it'll be fun.
Travel's good for everybody.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I really want to make it happen. It probably will last like a year or two, and then we'll come back.
And then you'll come back.
Or I'll be, so in love with it that we'll never come back. But
that's possible.
It might happen. I feel like I'm gonna love it, but might as well try.
All right. Well, we like to end with asking, what are your 3 favorite coffee shops of all time?
Well, Proper. Obviously, since I work there. Actually, the coffee's really good. I've learned more about coffee in the year that I've been at Proper than I had the previous 10 years of any other coffee shop, which I love. And then there's a little coffee shop in Kansas City. I say little. They've grown a lot, actually. They've got 2 locations now, called Mud Pie, and it is all vegan coffee shop bakery, which I love. And their pastries are amazing. But I like going in and like having a plethora of choices in front of me. I can eat anything, which is awesome. And then I like Bendel in Fort Collins. Bendel. It is this adorable little shop in an old barn. It's super cute.
Fort Collins is a really neat city. Fort Collins, Colorado. It's about an hour north of Denver on I-25. And it's a college town, and it's extremely bikeable, and it's very flat. So it's easy to get around in, and you're right at the base of the mountains, and they just have everything there. So if you ever get to Denver, see Denver, but get yourself to Fort Collins for a day trip if you can do it, because there's a lot there to be discovered that no one's really talking about yet. Most people are just, the tourist industry in Denver's pretty strong, but yeah, Fort Collins is one of the best kept secrets. I love going up there. I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's cute.
All right. Well, before we go, is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't already talked about? Are there any projects that you want to discuss? Are you on Pinterest? Do you want us to find you on Pinterest?
I mean, I'm always on Pinterest, but
you have a blog.
I do have a blog that I don't keep up with as well as I should. Yeah, but I have one. It's called rosemaryandguino.com.
Yep.
And I'm on Instagram with that, and Facebook. I don't do Twitter.
I think only the president does Twitter.
That's true. A little too much.
Yeah. And what is your blog chiefly about?
A little bit of everything. I tried not to get myself into one topic too much, because then I would never keep up with it. So it's got, mom stuff, and I usually put post about like Link's birthday parties. So his last 2 birthday parties are on there. Zero waste things. I'm kind of a wannabe zero waster. Vegan recipes every once in a while. Just a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So if you love it, Monica as much as we do, then check her out on rosemaryandgingham.com.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Austin, any final questions?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining
So much
us.
fun talking with you today.
Yeah. And as we end our episode, I want to remind you that we want to hear from our listeners. Maybe you know somebody that needs to be featured on our podcast. Maybe you want us to feature you. We're all into it. Just to give us a shout out somehow. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And I don't really know how to use Twitter, but I'm trying. And our email address is info at baristaunfiltered.com. We are on YouTube, so there's a live stream of this podcast if you want to see us and see the adorable hat that Monica is wearing today. If you want to support our podcast, please visit us at patreon.com/baristaunfiltered. Patreon allows you to donate in any amount and on any schedule, whatever works for your budget. And with that, we'll just wrap up. I'm Jodie Lee.
And I'm Austin Miller.
We hope you stay caffeinated, friends. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao.